The things that these AI models can do are just mind-blowing, and I think it's going to change everything. In our lifetimes, things are going to change a lot.
It will augment so many of the intelligent decision making we have to go through every day as business owners and shop owners.
It is now every 6 months technology is changing. Whoever wants to be successful in manufacturing, they have got to figure out how to start implementing AI into their business now.
Welcome to the Next-Gen Metal Fab podcast. I'm your host, Tim Heston. In each episode, I'll be joined by a rotation of co-hosts. Caleb Chamberlain from Oshkosh, Cody Lee from Everyday Technologies, and Lance Thrailkill from All Metals Fabricating. Together, we'll talk about what the future could look like for precision sheet metal and tube fabrication.
Mark your calendars. The 32nd Annual Advanced Laser Applications Workshop will take place from June 17th to 19th at the Suburban Collection Showcase in Novi, Michigan. This event connects manufacturers and suppliers in automotive, aerospace, agriculture, and fabrication. Enjoy 3 days of presentations from leading experts, cutting-edge demonstrations, and fascinating open houses. Discover the latest advancements and applications that are shaping the future of the industry. Visit fmamfg.org to learn more. And now, back to the episode.
Hi, this is Tim Heston from the Fabricator magazine at FMA. Thanks so much for joining us for this next installment of the Next-Gen Metal Fab podcast. I'm joined again by Caleb Chamberlain at Oshkosh and Lance Thrailkill at All Metals down in Texas. Kind of wanted to get the conversation started. Obviously, a lot of news is happening. And of course, I have to set a date. This is April 25th, 2025. So you probably will be listening to this perhaps when the trade landscape is entirely different or still in a phase of juggling, so to speak. And, I just wanted to, kick things off by kind of, some of the reporting I've been doing in recent days, chatting with various fab shops, large and small, especially the large ones, and how the inquiry activity has gone through the roof. Some of them have just gotten calls from supply chains that used to be in India, some such supply chains that used to be in China, and they're rethinking how they're either going to launch a product or bring a product or reshore a product. Most people I'm talking to are looking at the opportunities very carefully to make sure they're sustainable, kind of putting them in two categories. Low-hanging fruit is, all right, it would have made sense to make the product here anyway. So taking advantage of this opportunity, of this reshoring advantage. And then other areas are, how sustainable is this? Are they just chasing low labor costs? And now the tariffs are bringing it back, but how sustainable is that? This is kind of work for, we need to plan beyond just an election cycle. What will happen in more than 4 years? We don't know. And also the supply chain. If the supply chain is entirely baked in globally, how reliable will that work? Will it be chaotic? There's all sorts of chess pieces to move around. So Lance, I'm just kind of curious of the chess pieces you're seeing, and kind of what's happening on the ground there, as far as from your customer base and your workloads and what you're hearing around your area.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yeah, I mean, it's constantly changing. It's a moving target, and nobody really knows what's going on, other than the fact that prices have gone up. And fortunately, I think that what people don't know is those prices spiked before the tariffs went into place. So what happened at that point, I believe, is a lot of fabricators, ourselves included, secured a bunch of material. And so then once the tariffs went into place, now everybody's bought up a bunch of material. And what's going on right now is the mills are actually calling all the distributors like, hey, you send us some orders. And so you've seen the increases taper off, where initially we were hearing that we were going to have 2 more price hikes. Right now they're saying that it's pretty much flatlined and should hopefully start to go down, which is interesting. So similarly, we urged customers to go ahead and get orders in. We really saw, as I think I mentioned in the last kind of at the start of the last podcast, was that we our WIP had gone down, and over February and March slowed down quite a bit. But at the end of March, beginning of April, it really picked back up, and now we're back to humming along where we need to be. And so I don't know if that's just an initial boost of, we had sent an email out to customers urging them to get orders in because, anticipated price hikes, which was also just strategic for us as we'd slowed down saying, hey, get them in now, but that was truth. And, at the time we thought there'd be more hikes, and that's fortunately not going to be the case supposedly, but it's always changing. So, what it'll be telling in the coming months, how this all really plays out. Was this just an initial boost from people trying to get in front of future? How much does this really hamper, people's, willingness to go ahead and purchase product? So yeah, we're also dealing with an interesting thing where we're building parts for a certain customer that they're sending to Mexico to be assembled, and then they're getting tariffed with the parts coming back into the States from Mexico, and they're asking us to supply all these material certs and like the, source of the material, also the smelting country, which a lot of time the certs don't include the smelting country of origin, particularly some of the American certs. And so that's an extra burden on us. And I'm like, hey guys, I'll provide this for you every time if you want, but there's a cost associated with it. This is an extra effort. So that, they had set those wheels in motion before, but it's interesting that they're getting tariffed. I thought it was just on raw goods, but on any steel and aluminum, whether it's a fabricated part or not, coming back in. So they're even getting tariffed on American made stuff that's coming back in after being assembled in Mexico. So pretty interesting.
And among the entire supply chain, who's absorbing the cost now? Is it you passing it along and your customers are absorbing the cost?
We pass it on as much as we can. What ends up happening is, the mills pass it on, the distributors pass it on, and then once it gets down to the bottom of the food chain, it starts to get squeezed. And so, customers will be like, well, if you were okay making what you were making on this part before, why not just reduce your margin and make the same dollar amount that you were making before? And that's a slippery slope. So, we try to pass it along, but it's usually somewhere meeting in the middle where we're shaving, a couple percent off. Our costs may go up 5 to 10%, and we're, meeting them in the middle there somewhere. Sometimes we have to just pass on, sometimes we have to only accept what, what we were making before, which makes your margins look worse, which is fine unless you're trying to exit sometime soon. Then it's the private equity group's gonna be like, why is your margins going down? But that's not the case for us. So
Yeah. So Caleb, what's happening on your end as far as obviously different business model. You have a wide range of folks, but just kind of bring me through what you're hearing on the ground out there in Utah.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of new demand from new customers. So that definitely uptick. I actually don't know if it's because of tariffs or because of changes we made to our service, because we have changed some pretty significant things that we think has had an impact on conversion rates. But simultaneously, we're also seeing, I use the word off model because we have these spreadsheet models that describe customer behavior. So we're off model on recurring orders from repeat customers to they're ordering a lot more. And then we actually did stock up on material just like Lance did. I think that if the tariffs stick around long term, we will see prices nudge upward. I think there's going to be a lot of volatility and whiplash effect from people being reactionary, like we were. I mean, we said, hey, if the prices are going up, we should buy a bunch. And then we can maintain that cost for our customers for a little longer and anticipate any supply chain problems with getting material. But yeah, we haven't seen tons of price increase yet. And Lance is right. We saw that happen early. And it hasn't nudged up that far yet, but it is increasing. So
the sense I get from all the shops I've talked to in recent days is that someone gave me a great analogy. It's a hurdle race instead of just a marathon. It's fine as long as the track remains stable and we don't have mud in the way. And the mud would be what he called the financial plumbing of the world, which, he was watching the bond market and treasuries and we're like, okay, what's going on? And as long as we don't have a freeze in the financial plumbing, so to speak, like we did in the 2008-9 period where just everything just halted because of financial dysfunction. Um, and he said, we're muddling through the uncertainty. It's not ideal, but we're just going to assume this is what's going to happen and then move forward as we can. Lance, in the quote unquote broader media, we say, all right, we got big projects that are being put on hold, canceled because all this uncertainty. What are you seeing on the ground there?
We've actually seen, in telecom, and I don't know if it's customer specific. We've seen, a recent project that we were developing alongside a customer and AT&T. That project's taking off. So, I don't know if that's project specific, but I think to your point that last time and as that Trump was in office, it was the same thing. People forget that these tariffs was the same thing. It wasn't so broad and so, drastic all at once. But I think the difference was the momentum in the economy, the overall confidence in the economy. It just shows how fickle even the stock market is. The stock market is now emotional reactions, and because these tariffs should not be impacting the market the way that it has. And so I think to your point earlier, that's going to be the differentiator on how, business is moving forward. These tariffs shouldn't be impacting the stock market unless that company has a direct good that is coming imported and it's going to affect their profitability. But you saw companies that were impacted not moving on the market, and tech companies that maybe don't have anything to do with tariffs plummeting. So it's just doesn't make any sense. And I think the market will really dictate more uh, the impact on manufacturing than the tariffs will.
Right. Yeah. And I think you're right. And it is interesting in the fact that I mean, just the drama from the market drama in the media is going to lead to consumer sentiment, which is going to change, and that may change things ultimately down the road. But there's a lot of momentum here still. I mean, we really you know, I wish I heard more people just say, "I don't know," because they really don't know what's gonna happen. You have no idea, and, you just gotta see where the dust settles. And in fact, and I just kinda wanna make a hard shift here because I think that, obviously tariffs are all over the news, and we hear all sorts of tales from positive to negative to dysfunctional to people pulling their hair out. But one kind of strain that gets everybody, everybody kind of either terrified or excited is artificial intelligence. Yeah, AI just seems to be when I chat with folks, they always have an opinion, and they say, and there's this range of, oh, it's not gonna. I mean, it's just all a facade, or it's gonna change the world. And, Caleb, I just wanted you to dive in on this a bit because you've written some columns for us in the magazine saying, "Oh, AI is overblown," and then, "Oh, wait a minute, maybe not." So kind of how has your view changed with AI, regarding AI just, in the past 2 or 3 years?
Well, AI has gotten a lot better in the past 2 or 3 years, actually. Um, I think, I have a mixed view on a lot of this stuff. I'm very bearish on humanoids. I think humanoid robots are, like, almost never the right solution to almost any problem, because they're complex and expensive and with so many degrees of freedom, they're gonna break all the time, and as a manufacturer with machines that are much, much more simple and that yet break all the time, it's just a lot of disruptive impact of broken equipment, and I do not want a humanoid robot running around on my floor, getting ready to disrupt production when it breaks. Um, and also, they're not gonna be, like, commodity cheap. These things, like, with all the actuators and stuff, those things have a real cost. So, anyway, end of the day, robots, whatever. I think manufacturing is gonna be the place where jobs are preserved. But on the flip side, anything knowledge worker related, anything white collar office work related is going to be a very scary place to be over the course of the next decade. I mean, already the things that these AI models can do are just mind blowing. And I think it's going to change everything. And I think that the biggest impact will not be felt until the rising generation who grows up with AI really gets to work on it. So I think we're kind of set in our ways and can't really fully envision a future with AI. But yeah, and in our lifetimes, things are going to change a lot, which makes me really optimistic about being in manufacturing, to be honest. In that kind of uncertain world, having processes and equipment to add physical value to physical things is, I think, a really great hedge against that uncertainty.
I mean, if I type in bend deduction information into even Copilot, I've seen a dramatic improvement even within the last 6 months, to be honest. Like last year, it was laughable because it didn't even know what, but now since it knows me and knows what I type and it's watching me all the time, apparently. It has that knowledge, and all of a sudden, oh, it can do that. And now, like say, when I see your customer facing interface of where they can see a bend deduct, tools bend, right? Well, why not take that a step further? And you have the press, you punch and the die there. And you have you have you can see the collision with the flange and the sheet metal. All right, so it says, all right, you got a collision here. I can see in the future, well, that can be fixed by doing this or that. And it says, how about this? How about that? And just suggest it and bring the reader through and do the DFM live online. No kicking it back to the customer. I mean, I don't know. Have you thought about that kind of stuff?
I think maybe, honestly, I think that stuff like DFM will probably make sense to be done from first principles for the foreseeable future. And by first principles, I mean, hey, model the part, model the brake, run a collision check, and render it. Like that's first principles. You're not like a AI large language model is using these massively scaled up neural networks um, to uh, to create these complex results. And I think to the extent that you can just take a relatively physical real world system and just model it, that's always going to be better. For sure, it's always going to be more efficient. I've said stuff like this before, but I think the real benefit of AI is that AI can help us make those models. So, for example, I actually see a reasonable state in which an AI understands the problem that you're trying to solve and then volunteers to write code to solve it on the fly, solves it with that code and then problem solve. In fact, today, if you ask AI about certain things, it'll just write a script in Python. If you tell it to ask it to graph something, it writes a script in Python to do it. It's actually insane and really, really cool. Um, so yeah, I mean, who knows where it'll go? I don't think like LLMs are the right solution for some of this stuff, but I think the kind of reasoning and code writing, problem solving ability that they have is where we're going to see those things get traction. But I mean, who knows? I'm just spitballing.
Well, Lance, what's your view on this as far as from your perspective and where you see AI really affecting your business within the next 3 to 5 years? Like, all right, either the front end, perhaps some of the machine technology you're looking at. Just kind of bring me through your thoughts there.
Yeah, so it's funny that you said 6 months ago because that's the power of AI. That's what we're seeing now is that with technology, the cycle time of it turning over has been cut in half and half and half. And now with AI, it is now every 6 months technology is changing. And so it's no coincidence that 6 months later you see, the bin deductions being correct. What I would say is whoever wants to be successful in manufacturing or any field, um, they have got to figure out how to start implementing AI into their business now. And so if you want to be a successful executive, or whatever, fill in the blank, you need to be figuring out how to use AI right now. And for us, we already have AI built into, our quoting software. I'm sure Caleb, if he doesn't already, will be figuring out how to put AI into theirs. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I think that it's going to impact every aspect of our business. And we are looking on how to be on the forefront of that. I'm looking at trying to hire a AI intern just to figure out like what processes. I think really from like a front office, back office, that's the easy wins of like how you can use AI to your advantages. Stuff as simple as like listening to your calls and responding, typing up a summary and a response is just simple easy wins that you can implement now. But we already see it in quoting and estimating. We're on the journey of, our ERP system is end of life, and so I've told the major players out there, I don't want to even look. I'm not even looking at your system if it doesn't have AI built into it, which is kind of a scary thing too, because I've been the first one to buy machines before, and they're not going to do that anymore. Because when you get the first one, it always has some issues. That's why usually, like on software updates, we wait for round two to update. But that's the reality, is if you want to have the best software now, you're going to have to be embracing a new one. And so, in talks with our vendor on partnering with them and developing their beta version of it right now, and yeah, I think especially from scheduling. So right now, like, that's our burden in our software, is the scheduling aspect of it. And I'm like, I don't want to really, for really good scheduling, you need that human intervention. And so why can you not replicate that same mindset through AI and get you 80-90% of the way there? Is my thought process. But I think it's going to impact, predictive maintenance, quality control, defect, detection, workflow optimization, human and machine collaboration. I think it's going to impact everything. And I think that, how quickly you're able to embrace that and is going to be a indicator on how long-term successful you'll be.
Yeah, I agree with it, with everything you're saying there, and that what I'm hearing from sources, both when I talk to software vendors, and like one software vendor told me an interesting story where he said, all right, we're going to connect. You mentioned scheduling, but also scheduling with marketing, sales, and estimating, just to obviously dialing your quotes, because you have deviations from your schedule. Well, obviously because the challenge with complex contract manufacturing and job shop work is that you've got 18 million job routings going through different. You go to paint, go to weld, you got weld fixtures, you got all these different things to plan for, and they all change with the job mix. So you could be, it could be a slow time, it could be a hectic time, and you could have totally different costs, and even the sequence of jobs changes, how effective jobs can flow through the shop floor. So, um, you know, I look at it as an extraordinarily complex system that, if software really got granular, and that's of course the idea between of IoT and all this tracking, is like, all right, does this how efficient are you, and then let's filter this back up into your ERP system, say, all right, this is where your real costs are, this is where your core customer base is. Now how do we communicate that to our core customer base by really breaking through the marketing noise to actually attract those kinds of customers and build the business I want? Because this is what I'm good at versus what I think I'm good at from a gut feeling, because I just like working with these customers. And so, like a lot of, so some shops I've talked to in the past, they say, this is a relationship business. I mean, obviously, Caleb's business is far different from that, as far as the breadth and horizontal aspect of it across the industry. But most fab shops focus on a collection of markets that they get really good at, and they build decades long relationships, and those relationships really kind of guide the business, even if, say, a business relationship is not the best for your business. So you could bend over backwards for a customer because you like that customer. You have a good relationship with that customer. You guys are just you've been in the trenches together. You want to help this person, but then the ripple effects happen, and then chaos ensues. And so there's all this information that AI can glean from all this to say, hey, you can actually, kind of build a business that is far smoother and less chaotic, and actually scale in a very seamless way. That's kind of what I see. I don't know, or is that all hogwash?
No, I mean, I think that's good.
Well, I kind of approach topics of AI from the perspective of a career software developer and technologist, because that's what I did before I started Oshcut 7 years ago. So when people talk about AI, helping with scheduling and planning and bidding. And my first thought is, okay, well, I know how to connect with OpenAI via API or any number of other things. I know how to tie AI into our software. I could build a wrapper around uh, ChatGPT and have a customer service function exposed on our website over a weekend. But I look at all that and I think, okay, well, how can I leverage the tools that are available to help with scheduling? And I just come up with a complete blank. Um, which isn't to say that it can't be done, but I don't see how to get there from point A to point B. I mean, we're a high mix fabricator and we do, approaching 4,000 unique part numbers a week. And when I look at um, when I look at AI, I'm just like, well, the best scheduling is like from first principles. You're using statistical analyses to try to predict outcomes that are going to happen, and we do that. But it's not. I don't think it's what people mean when they think AI. But I would say if we were kind of unapologetic marketers, we would call it AI and call it a day. But it's not this new trend of AI. It's Monte Carlo, and it's been around for a very long time. And we're not inventing it either. We're just applying a pre-existing tool that's been around for a very long time. So, but AI can help you develop those tools, but I don't think it's like, yeah, AI did my scheduling. And to be honest, like big companies, big brokers like Xometry, they say they use AI and they're savvy marketers and they're VC backed and they're scale first. And I don't know. I think they're riding the hype. I think it's more likely the vast majority of their like uh, code that handles like assigning jobs to network shops and stuff and prices it. I bet it's like 99% first principles, like deterministic. You're not running
Yeah.
some LLM every time you upload a 3D model. I just don't think that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. I think that it's really just DFM, that they're predicting manufacturability issues, which is, what percentage of that, and Caleb can speak to it much more intelligently than I can, given his background. But yeah, I'm with you. And even what I'm talking about, like, so in an ERP system, like, I'm like, when we enter a job, and like, why should it not automatically create the POs to the vendors, either send it or prompt it up to send it, send a confirmation, and you can already have it tools where you send the confirmation to the customer automatically. But how much of that is actually AI? I don't know. But like that, when I think in the realm of AI, of like so it's a different, people blend, myself especially, blend automation with AI, and people that are much smarter like Caleb know the differentiators between like how much of that is truly AI, and how much of that is just an automation, um, basically. So, um, and I think, Caleb, on your shop, the scheduling, given the lower number of processes and lack of assembly, where we really get hung up is the complex assemblies, the complex weldments. So, I mean, I was just on the floor today and we got assembly super frustrated because they've got, these huge doors for this complex assembly already staged at assembly, taking up their space. And the rest of the weldment is at the break and in weld department. Well, in reality, our scheduler as is knows the backward schedule to make components meet up at the appropriate time in the desired location. But, the reality is the lasers and combo are always further behind than the punches. The punches are always ahead. And so it's like, well, the punch guy's like, I need something to do, so I'm going to punch it. It gets to the break. They're like, okay, well, I need something. I'm going to bend it. The welders are always eating for, chomping at the bit for more work. So they're going to grab it and weld it up, And so it's like, you have to have, that's what I was coaching our team on, is like, we can manage the schedule as closely as we want, but we have to have manual people out there that are stopping and looking and saying, hey, this is going to cause a burden downstream, even if it's better right now. And so no matter how much AI you have, you've got to have intelligence on the floor to make sure and selflessness to be cognizant of how that impacts downstream. Because then you end up with a bunch of parts sitting in a department, and it's fine if they're little parts, but when they're huge and taking up a lot of space in their staging area and causing them frustration, then that's another subject.
I kind of just go off on the marketing stuff sometimes because it irritates me. But I think the reality is that when you talk about machine learning and AI, I mean, if you get a purchase order from a customer and you pull it in, it's like a JPEG that they scanned in and faxed or something, which happens still all the time. If you have software that's doing OCR to pull out by optical character recognition to pull out the words for that, that's actually arguably AI. That's machine learning. There's probably a neural network under there running to pull out those characters. So if you're doing that, you're already using AI. Now it's just there's a lot wrapped up in it that it's kind of it's one tool in a very large tool bag, I guess is one way to say it. And it's getting increasingly powerful, but it's still not a perfect fit solution for everything. So what you just described with stuff going downstream and causing bottlenecks and pace and space pain on the floor, like totally solvable with a Monte Carlo simulator and the right models and heuristic design and all kinds of stuff.
What's different now than say 10 to 15 years ago is that more people are realizing the tool bag is there and how important that information automation is. I mean, I would group AI into this big bag of information automation. When I first started reporting on this industry, I never heard about any changes in the front office. It was always manual quoting. It was a bunch of paper travelers and shops run on Excel sheets, and there was no uh, innovative. I mean, that's not where it was. And in fact, a lot of folks back in the day, they didn't touch ERP with a 10-foot pole because it was not really built for job shops way back in the day. And so but now it's just everybody realizes just uh, the importance of uncovering the truth, so to speak. Somebody told me a great story where you know, it, it's interesting. It's they implemented an IoT platform, and I go to their shop, and they finally realized through that IoT platform that this guy has to walk across the floor to get these certain punch tools, and why and so it basically is a software program to uncover the truth of what's going on versus, all right, just looking and seeing what's going on. And it's difficult to uncover that sometimes because it is a high product mix environment. So it may happen sporadically, so you never see it. But it's that kind of observation of gleaning the truth that's happening on the shop floor so that you can actually schedule intelligently, but also just have people collaborate. I mean, that's why folks go towards cellular manufacturing and just have folks going, all right, here's we're going to have this much whip before the bending and welding and final assembly cell, but you guys manage how you bring parts through that entire value stream. We're not, it's going to be this amount and we're going to have an 80% buffer and go.
I like that angle. It's what you're describing is that there's kind of two opposite ways of solving manufacturing complexity. And one is super intelligent centralized planning, which would include AI methods for scheduling, whatever those are, and Monte Carlo, which I just described. Um, but a cheaper and more tractable solution for optimizing manufacturing is to simplify the process enough that it self-optimizes. And that's really in line with lean manufacturing is you just, uh, like, for example, designing a Kanban, a process-to-process Kanban process and pull-based manufacturing can solve a lot of bottlenecks and expose what they are. And you can do that without like trying to tool up with some really complicated, possibly functional, possibly not software planning engine. As cool as it is, like I geek out over Monte Carlo. As you know, I talk about it all the time because it's really cool. But um, if you can instead just design your processes so you don't need it, all the better. So it's kind of an interesting trade-off there.
Yeah, there's I mean, occasionally I know a shop that basically does the old school of just he puts several post-it notes on a blank that's cut from the laser and just sees how long it takes for those things to go all the way through the shop floor and track, and it's just it's just utter basic. All right, this is the whole flow, and we're not going to worry about machine uptime. There was an interesting conversation I had at FabTech actually with a shop who was curious about those local um, real-time location devices, but really, I mean, a post-it note on a traveler would work as well, but the real-time location devices would actually track the traffic through the shop floor. And so, all right, basically, it's like a traffic monitor, and I want those to be moving as quickly as possible. I don't care about machine utilization. I care about machine availability. I want that thing to always be available. So if it's down, that's a problem. And, if it can't be used, it's a problem. But I'm not going to run it just to run it. We got to get these jobs through the floor. It's not about utilizing that machine. It's increasing the part flow velocity. What makes metal fab such a challenging industry is that the customer mix defines your operation. And so you got the front office selling what they can sell. And so when the customer mix changes, so does your operation. So I mean, I visited a shop, Metcam, who moved to cellular manufacturing in Atlanta, and it was just this amazing thing that they had 7 cells and it was all flowing through great. But then the customer mix changed, and then, the press brake beds were not the press brake, beds were not the proper size for the blanks, and so they had to be moving parts around, the different cells because they didn't have exact duplicate capacity with all the brakes. And they had certain tooling, and so it's just extraordinarily difficult to manage. Um, and so when I think of AI, I just think of all the complexities within the metal fab universe and how it could connect the dots. I'm not sure how. Obviously, I'm not a software programmer, and I really, as a reporter, what's funny is like, of course, I'm inundated with marketing all the time, and so I just recognize it for what it is. Like, all right, whatever marketing you call it, whatever you call it, but it's a value, and it's whether it's AI or not is that's for the software journals to decide. But it's for the customers to decide. It's for the people who are using it, saying, "Is this useful? Can this actually improve my business?" And what's interesting these days is that I'm seeing more potential of yes, it could. I mean, they're just like, man, there's just a lot of low hanging fruit that like you could actually, especially with marketing and sales. There are so many businesses out there that just have grown through word of mouth marketing. And I mean, heck, some of them don't have even websites. They're just there. Lance, how did all metals marketing and sales kind of evolve over the years, and has it changed?
Yeah, so when I got here 17 years ago, I'm pretty sure my dad and grandfather had never spent a dollar on marketing. We've been working, fortunate enough to work with a great outside sales rep for 40 years, and they've done a great job. But it's all other than them. It's a pound on the pavement. It's been word of mouth until I got here, and in 2000 probably 10, I started doing search engine optimization. So we really, and it's funny at the time I told my dad, it was like, I noticed how anytime we had somebody come do a tour, we'd usually close the account and get the business. And so I said, let's put an online tour. I'm going to start doing the search engine optimization. And he said to me, you think we're going to actually get business from people not ever even stepping foot into our shop? And 10 years later, half of our top 10, but like were through SEO that had never come into our shop and just found us online and took the tour on through the video. But I'm glad this part of it came up because I think there's a huge benefit to AI in sales and marketing. And so I started researching, so given that how much success we had with SEO, I thought, what's the next thing? ChatGPT. People start looking to ChatGPT to refer business. So how do I figure out how to, you know, have ChatGPT refer business to me once people start? So we downloaded a tracker on our website, and then sure enough, already I think 5 to 10 it's gone up each month. The number of people that search for your business through AI is going up each month, and it's not a lot. It was started out at a couple, and it's now maybe up to 10. But Anyway, so I started investing time into the ways to get ChatGPT to refer your business, and that's been fun. But even stuff as simple as having it write you B2B sales strategy. I've got the deep research version of ChatGPT, and I mean, I threw in there, hey, we're struggling with our ERP system. Find me the best. That here's what I want. Here's our shop size, and it wrote a white paper with breakdown analysis of every software. Did it in the regular ChatGPT will spit it out in minutes. If we do the deep research, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to run it. And I told we're trying to figure out where we can fit another laser right now. I said, let's get the floor plan and load it into ChatGPT and see if it can come up with some space to create, just using it for stuff like that. But the sales strategy, I just came across for a separate business, but it's very applicable to all metals as well. There's this thing called Copilot AI out there where it connects into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and it'll drip campaign to the it searches through all the Sales Navigator, who's the most likely people to respond based on the fields that you need, and it'll message them in LinkedIn. You can strategize how you want that, which I personally hate getting those, but I think if you have the right approach and a very soft approach and instead of a hard salesy approach, it could be attractive. But yeah, I mean, you can use that, and then it doesn't pop up in your inbox until they've responded. And so using AI to grow your business and using it as to develop sales strategies, different things like that. I mean, it'll even you ask ChatGPT, write me a sales strategy, and then you can ask it, like, who should I search for in these industries? What job titles for sale? What knows Sales Navigator? And so it'll tell you the exact names, the titles. There's all these different characteristics to search for, and then it'll say, "Would you like me to develop a prompt, messaging sequence for you?" Boom, 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 boom. And then it's got. I mean, all you gotta do is copy paste and put it in there, and so you can utilize it for so many different things. And I haven't seen yet how the floor plan strategy will work, but it's my understanding that would work. I don't know if it'd be a good result or not. We'll find out soon.
Yeah, and just to close this conversation out, I really wanted to tap into Caleb because I know Caleb has some great stories to tell, not necessarily from, well, I know you've talked about sales and marketing before, but also just from a software development standpoint, and you've written about it in the magazine.
So for starters, we're using AI tooling just all over the place in our software development today. We use it while we're coding. I like the Cursor IDE, which is a fork of Visual Studio Code, and it just really bakes in AI into what you're using to code. And in fact, it can even create from whole cloth brand new dev environments and projects for you, which we've done. We actually have kind of a virtual Kanban app that we use for some of our customer service workflows, which I vibe coded. They call it vibe coding. You're just chatting with an AI. And anyway, built this app in like an hour one weekend, and now we're using it daily on the shop floor. And it's really, really cool. So yeah, there's multiple pieces there. There's one, just accelerating developer workflows. When we push new code up to GitHub, we actually have Copilot on GitHub doing design reviews on that code. So it actually goes back and it adds comments and it highlights code, and it's like, hey, there's an error here, or you might want to reconsider this model, it's inefficient, and then it summarizes all your changes. It says this was changed, this was changed. So it's kind of an extra layer of safety on our deploy cycles and our continuous integration cycles, and it's an accelerator on just doing new apps to support new workflows, and it's super cool, and it's just going to get better from here.
Your comment about how software development has utterly changed. I think we're going to see the democratization of software throughout business in general. I think our children will kind of look at software the same the same way we look at Word. Open up Microsoft Word and you write something. Why wouldn't you open up a computer and write a software program? Why wouldn't you, why wouldn't you write something that would help make your life easier? I think software coding is probably going to become that ubiquitous in the coming years. And so what's interesting is that the AI industry developed by the software and tech will probably have the most profound impact on tech and how that whole industry is structured. And it will benefit, that's kind of my rosy outlook, is it will benefit even the smallest organizations who have access to a PC on every desk, AI power on every desk, that kind of thing. So AI power in your phone. And you can just write something on the fly saying, I need something that writes me a schedule for this job in this particular instance. Can you do this for me? Should I do this? Should I do that? Could you help me out with this? You'll be able to create so much. It will augment so many of the intelligent decision making we have to go through every day as business owners and shop owners. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of Next-Gen Metal Fab podcast. We'll continue the discussion. We'll also have a later episode with Cody Lee at Everyday Technologies. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We'll talk next time. Thanks so much.
The Next-Gen Metal Fab podcast is a production of Fabricators and Manufacturers Association and part of the FMA Podcast Network. The show is hosted by Tim Heston and Caleb Chamberlain. The podcast is produced and edited by Garrett Slager and Dana Weicker. Additional production support by Dan Davis, Andy Flando, Mike Owens, Billy Culpa, Elizabeth Gavin, and me, Sarah Spring. Thank you for listening.
Really breaking through the marketing noise